System concepts, Article 21, the screen. Our corporeal desires do not need a screen. This includes our desires for food, sex, family, money, honor, and knowledge. The desire for connection does not actually exist by itself, but rather serves another desire, such as safety, family, or business, money. The screen allows us to keep our physical desires intact while maintaining our perception growth. Without the screen, we muddle up our physical and spiritual endeavors. The screen allows us to have physical events without them dragging us down into them. We can maintain a confident posture and an observational point of view while still interacting in our reality. Here's a quote. Number 17. Thus far, we have clarified the three basic elements in the wisdom. The first is the light and the kli, where the light is the direct extension of his essence, and the kli is the will to receive, which is necessarily included in that light. One departs the emanator and becomes an emanated being to the extent of that desire. Also, this will to receive is considered the malchut, discerned in the upper light. This is why it's called malchut, by the way of he is one and his name one, as his name in Gematria is ratzon, desire. The second matter is the clarification of the 10 sefirot and 4 worlds abiyah, which are 4 degrees one below the other. The will to receive must hang down through them until it is completed, kli and content. The third matter is the tzimtzum and the masach, placed on this vessel of reception, which is Bechina Daled, in return for which new vessels of reception were made in the 10 sefirot, called Or Chozel. Understand and memorize these 3 foundations and their reasons as they appeared before you, since without them there is no understanding of even a single word in this wisdom. 5 discernments in the Masach from the article Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah by Bala Sulam. The reason our spiritual desires need a screen is because they are about power, not filling. This means that changes in our perception do not manipulate our senses like our corporeal desires do. Many practice pseudo-spiritual ideas and claim that they must be spiritual. These artificial experiences are not spiritual because they leave you in a passive state of awareness and normally disconnect you from reality. They do not grant you the force to control your situations. They have nothing to do with internal power. They also involve actions that need to be done and do not have a lasting effect on our lives. This can be seen when not practicing the physical actions, such as prayer and meditation. And finally, they have an effect on our physical senses, while spirituality changes our perception on life. While spirituality changes our perception on life. 105. As light excels over, this is a quote. 105. As light excels over darkness. The benefit of the light comes only out of the darkness. The correction of the white is black, for without the black, the white would be pointless. And because there is black, the white is elevated and respected. It is like sweet and bitter. A person cannot know the taste of sweetness before he has tasted bitterness. Thus, what makes it sweet is the bitter. In things where there are opposites, the one reveals the other, such as in white and black, light and darkness, sick and healthy. If there are no sickness in the world, the term healthy would be unattainable. As it is written, God has made the one opposite the other. It is also written, it is good that you grasp the one and also not let go of the other. From Kitas Riya, when a woman inseminates, from unlocking the Zohar. Control over your experiences and giving you the power to handle them is spirituality. Kabbalah is purposely encoded to give people the expression that they are going from coarseness to purity. Immediately people imagine disconnection from reality where no details will be discerned. However, it is the exact opposite situation, where we are in purity and therefore cannot see the coarse reality we are in. We need the equivalence of form with the reality we live in, and that is what Kabbalah is really all about. This means we go from immaturity in our perception, purity, to a mature perception, coarseness. We evolve in our perception from Ein Sof, boundless light, to this world exactly like the path reality was transformed. And here's the first question. What is a screen? Davina.
A screen is the covering of a kli or a desire, but only in the realm of spirituality, because it's talking about power and not receiving or filling.
Najina.
Same thing Davina said. It's a covering placed on spiritual desires, which allows you to differentiate situations where you're not using them for filling, but instead using it to gain more internal power.
Gabriel.
Is what lets you receive the control, receive the power, but and not use it in order to fulfill your basic desires that have nothing to do with spirituality. Without this, we would fall back into our old ways, and we pretty much go into a clip out, so we wouldn't advance. So that screen actually lets you differentiate whether and what desires act upon, and use the control and whatnot.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, that to me is like a valve. It's something that we build ourselves, I guess, through our discernments and something else, discernments and desire, but it protects us, because we cannot handle, the full strength of the light that would come in. So this is how we can regulate and modulate it. Thank you.
Jimmy.
It's a tool that I use to help my brothers uplift divinity from the dust.
Krista.
The screen is there to, restrict the will to receive. Our will to receive is all about receiving the Creator's light, and it's there to make sure that we don't take too much in at any given time.
Lee.
Really can't add a whole lot to that. Just a deflector, to, as Jimmy said, I liked a tool to help lift the brothers, the friends up, but also it's to increase that internal power and reach the Creator. Thank you.
Maria.
I would say my current perception of the screen is it's a place. I'm not sure if it's like a place or a state, but to be able to relate to a desire, kind of like on the side, meaning it's not going to affect me for good or bad, but I'm able to at that point question my intention or tailor it so that I am making a decision as to whether I'm going to be relating to it as the feeling, or no, I'm going to actually make a conscious decision of how to unite Israel, the Torah, and the Creator one. Like, in other words, how can I use this particular desire that just appeared and aim it towards goal?
Mark.
The screen is a perceptional filter that helps us see reality or receive the light and see reality for what it is, to bring us away from corporeality and help us see what's on the spiritual side of things. Thank you.
Robin.
Yes, the screen it blocks the light, so you can see the details of reality, and it gives you control over your own desires, your will to receive, and so forth.
Moshe writes, a screen is what helps you filter the light and see the real details of the light and your true desires. And Caesar writes, it is a new perception of the reality, a shift from that one chance to a passive way to interact with his own reality to someone living it in a present future state. The screen is what allows us to have that, to basically combine opposites. So we have the creator, which is bestowal. We have the will to receive, which is reception. And how could they possibly be together? And that's where the screen comes into play. The screen allows us to handle the dichotomy between those concepts, between controlling our life and living in our life. And the screen allows us to exist in both. Yes, Mark?
Did you see that Caesar had written into the chat also an answer for us, the guy?
Yeah, I actually read his. Read it.
I'm sorry.
No problem. That's fine. The second question, how do we clean up our concepts of what is spirituality? Davina.
We, not in like a second phase type of way, but we need that friend to reflect back to us this conversation of what is being desired in proportion to the effort.
Najina.
I guess the short answer is you come at it from kind of the backside. At least I usually do. First, you figure out what isn't spirituality. And once you can do that, then you can say, well, the absence of spirituality, this is now what I need to reach because I see the absence or the lack of it. And also, as Davina said, sometimes it's helpful to have friends in this way to help you clean concepts and realign you to where you're going into corporeality and what is spirituality and so on and so forth.
Gabriel.
Yeah, I mean, as we discover what is not spirituality, that pretty much creates that desire. It creates that space after the effort to actually be rewarded with, and then slowly you actually build all you need really, which is a desire. And after that desire, you'll discover it.
Jeffrey.
Oh, sorry, friends. Yeah, it's what we do by our talking with each other. We present what we believe, then we listen to the other perspectives and perceptions of our friends, because we all have the same emotional states, but different personal experiences to bring us there. So that's how I do it. Is conversating. Thank you,
Jimmy.
If I'm going to clean up my concept, my concept is a belief, something, that I believe in. And spirituality is something you can taste. You can have a practical experience of it. I know what it's like to feel light. Okay, nobody needs to explain that to me. I know when the light of Hasidim vibrates within me, there's a smile on my face. And even if I'm on the subway or on a train, people will look at me and notice, hey, what's up with this guy? And it's not this guy, it's the light. So if I have that practical experience, it just takes my concepts and just blows them to smithereens, because now I'm not relying on my mind. I'm feeling something with my point in the heart. That's all I got.
Krista.
Well, I like the answer about coming at it from, realizing that it's not spirituality. That's kind of what I've been doing, and that's quite a bit. what I thought was spirituality is not. And so I'm kind of going through that process right now. And then, of course, crossing the barrier did really help.
Lee.
You're muted, Lee.
Connecting and role playing and sharing what we understand. I know I need to do that more, so I can get these perceptions. It's just kind of playing spiritual volleyball or ping pong, and eventually it comes. Thank you.
Maria.
How can we clean up concepts? Well, spirituality, from my perspective, from my current perspective, means bestowal, which means, control. And how much control do I have over situations now, over my desires now, versus where I want to be? And I think in order to clean the concepts, I don't want to imagine. Someone can imagine what it would be to be in spirituality and feel very euphoric, and it's still imagination. I want to be able to measure it by how much, by how much internal power I can use towards my desires. But I think the group helps immensely because they are offering an image of what one needs to correct or clean up, and it can be painful sometimes, I guess. So I have to have that openness to allow that. It is painful sometimes to compare the will to receive to the will to what we think the will to bestow is, right? So the group helps clean the concepts together, and also if I can see how I'm interacting with my desires and see where I've been, where I am, and where I want to be.
Mark.
Wow, fantastic answers, and especially the part that Maria just mentioned about personal power. Number one, how do we clean up our concepts of what is spirituality? We can't. I can't. What I can do is I can choose the right environment, or I can choose an individual to work with to help me with this. But by myself, these concepts will elude me, or I will fool myself into believing something that's not true. So I need the environment, or I need an individual, or I need many individuals to help me with these concepts. But it's my internal power that actually is going to help me clean these concepts up. Thank you.
Robin.
It seems like you have to aim yourself at spirituality because you don't have it till you get it. So it's perception changes. You have to aim by being in the group, by reading the text, by listening to the Rav, by just about doing everything you can to aim yourself in that direction.
Moshe writes, I think we have to allow ourselves to want to clean concepts and let us be vulnerable for a high goal, even if it hurts. And Caesar writes, going through the phases 3 and 4, we start to empower and be empowered by the friends, the group, individuals, revealing pain points. We can grow our confidence and cross the spiritual barrier. As many people have said here, that the first thing is to understand what is not spirituality. It's so much easier for us to just want to define something, but like we saw in the article, we define things mostly by contrast, by knowing the opposite. And the whole work before the barrier is to know what is not spirituality, and then all the work after the barrier is what is spirituality. And that's why before the barrier it's called lo lishma, and then after the barrier it's called lishma. So you've got the no before and then the yes afterwards. The third question. How does internal power help us? Davina.
How does internal power help us? it gives us the motion to be in the direction of attaining the desire. In other words, I feel like it's specifically for that use. That when the desire becomes so great, you're so frustrated that you're not there, and you get discernments and you plateau. It's the internal anger, in a sense, that says, you know what, this time I'm going to get it.
Gina.
Well, internal power is a grip. It's a grip on your reality, or rather, acquiring internal power gives you a grip on your reality. You can call it control over your desires, and which gives you then the ability to direct your desires towards a specific targeted goal, and not getting bogged down essentially in corporeal events as they present themselves in your life on their surface level. If you have internal power, you can figure out the deeper internal meanings in seemingly corporeal events, and use those for your advancement much better. And internal power will allow you to do that. It'll allow you to dig deeper and make sense of reality, and therefore be able to control it.
Gabriel.
It's my reward. I mean, it's what pretty much the only thing I'm expecting to receive, and it's what keeps me focused, and it really, takes away every other single desire.
Jeffrey.
Well, these answers have been superb, and like on top of all what they just said, for me, it's like my fail-safe. It's that inner net substance I have that's going to keep me going on this path, because sometimes I'm all like, this is a bunch of baloney, adios, right? And it's that keeps me, I think, in the game here. It's like I can't bust out of the casino unless I get really wacky. So I just keep, I just bear down again. And it's just like Gina and Gabriel just said, it's that's my reward. It's what I've got, and I'm going to keep going. Thank you.
Jimmy.
My internal power increases as I draw closer to God. And as that happens, I say with this power, what should I do with this? Well, I have this. What should I use it for? And then I realize that to move into Loli Shema, I must pray for the children of Mount Hood, the prayer of the many, and then that will move me to where I need to be.
Krista.
Well, I think our internal power is what allows us to develop, and it increases, because we have a lot of development to do, so we need a lot of internal power. So I think it's all about control, and like what Jimmy said, it increases, it brings us closer to final correction.
Lee.
Totally agree with this control idea. I even forgot the question now, but it's all about bringing contentment to the Creator. Thank you.
Maria.
I just thought about the answer that you said in the first question, being in this dichotomy or in this contradiction at the same time, because first of all, we don't have any freedom. There's no freedom in the system as far as we're able to change it in any way. But at the same time, we're going to go through the path, and I think the only control over it, the only difference in having this seeming internal control, is whether it's our perception of it. So are we, feeling it as the path of suffering, or are we hastening time? And I can describe it as if you're going to go through this river, and you can either not have any conscious of how everything is moving, or you can move above and actually have a seeming control over how to maneuver it. That the stream is going this way, you're actually going against it, or I'm not going with this flow. But I think that the internal control, the more that you have it, it gives you a seeming power over it, but it's all still a closed system, if you will.
Mark.
I think this internal power helps us in two ways. One, it's a carrot on a stick in front of us. It gives us something to shoot for, or a reward, as others have said. And it also gives us self-confidence to continue. Thank you.
Robin.
Let's see. Internal power gives us stability, control over our emotions, gives us direction. It allows us to fulfill ourselves, become who we really are, I think.
Caesar writes, helps us not make mistaking internal power from just corporeal feeling, and also achieve equivalence of form with the reality we live in. Moshe writes, it gives you a sense of control because you become the creator of your reality. When you reach full adhesion with the creator within you, the whole world is yours, in actuality and in power. Yes, and internal power is a synonym for bestowal, for the creator, for control, influence. And basically at the end of the day, you've just got two parts. You've got a will to receive that receives filling, and you've got what controls that will to receive, which is the will to bestow. So when we're saying increasing our internal power, we're saying to have more and more conscious awareness and control of our lives. That at the beginning we think the problems in our life is that we're lacking filling, but today we're at the situation where we actually have access to all the filling we need. Our problem is that our desires aren't clean, and we constantly are fighting with ourselves, so we don't get anything done. We don't have even control of ourselves, yet, let alone other people. So by gaining more and more internal power, it cleans our desires and allows us to know what exactly do we want. And if we don't want something, but would like to want something, we know where to get it from, how to increase that desire accordingly. So what do you think of the article?
Manna from heaven.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay, can you do another summary again of
A summary of what?
like what is it, or summarize it again?
I couldn't hear you cutting off. What do you want a summary of? Are you there, Maria? We can't hear you.
I think she wanted a summary of the article. Is that right, Maria?
I think I lost connection. But my question was, like, could you give us a summary of what a screen is? Like, how the purpose or what it's or how is it used. Yeah, basically like a summary of the article, if you will.
Okay, so the screen is what allows the will to receive to become the will to bestow, and handle those two concepts together. So the thing is, if you just get rid of the will to receive, then you're basically allowing the will to bestow within you to be apparent, and you feel great, you feel amazing, but you can't do anything. Your desire is dead. You're just like, it's like, think of people that, for example, there's this great TED video where this brain surgeon had a stroke in her left side of the brain, and then basically her ego got disabled, and then she's feeling that oneness, she's feeling part of everything, and it's feeling so great, but you can't do anything in that state. You can't get anything done. You can't be in the state of, oh, everything's one, go to work, right? So you've got a problem. If you're in the will to bestow, you basically plateau and you can't move because you have no desire. And if you're in the will to receive, which is the desire, you're running after all these desires, but you're constantly chasing your own tail, and you're so locked into your desires that you're just running around yourself, and you're constantly bashing into reality. So you've got these two options. You can either be at one with reality and then just do nothing, or you can be against reality and constantly want to change things. The middle line, which is that screen, that point in the heart, which actually, the point in the heart is the posterior of the screen. So the point in the heart is what goes through those phases of it. It goes from the passive point in the heart to the active point in the heart to the intense point in the heart, and then becomes that screen. And what the screen allows you is to live in both perceptions at once. So your sense of self is the creator. I control my will to receive, but I still have a will to receive to actually make me go around and do stuff. I still have a will to receive for me to have situations that I experience, and then I can use that control mechanism, which is the creator on it. So the screen is the ability to contain both the will to receive and the will to bestow together within me.
You should write that out so I could contemplate on that. I like that.
One of the things that is just so hard in the path is where we're constantly dealing with dichotomies and opposites. And it's like, if the goal is love, why are we constantly having to reveal evil? And if the goal is unity, Zakai, why are you constantly like increasing our left line and increasing our ego and telling us how we need to control and manipulate? And it's like, I thought it's all about unity and connection. And it's so hard for us to contain these concepts together. And when our screen is enabled, that's what enables us to handle these concepts together. And when our screen is disabled, that's when we go into confusion, and we can't contain these oppositeness in one. We can't be the most connected person and the most disconnected person at the same time. Because if I want to use a knife, I have to know the separation on one hand between me and the knife, but still want to use the knife. So there's that connection. So on one hand, there needs to be a disconnection. There needs to be a separation between me and the object that I'm using. But on the other hand, there also needs connection for me to actually use it. And the same is with humans. We basically have to start relating to humans in a sense like objects, where if I want to use something, I need to know that I'm separate from it, but still have that connection to be able to use it. And then you can say, are we just going to start using each other like wrongly? No, we have the goal. The goal, if you don't have the goal, you lose internal power. If you don't have the goal, you don't have the creative side in you, then your screen is disabled, and then you can't use your internal power. You can't handle the dichotomy of those concepts, where on one hand, I'm going to be in reality and moving as a human being, and at the same time, I'm observing and I'm the creator and I'm controlling and I'm affecting people from within.
Now I see that same, here's an analogy. I hope I don't get you riled up or myself in trouble, because I'm going to go to my air conditioning concept.
Enjoy yourself.
The thought that's programmed into the controller to send out a thought to whatever device, whatever puppet, whatever mechanical device, you want the indoor blower motor to come on. So I have to separate that thought versus that person versus that load, right? That connects?
Yes, you have to separate between the controller and the air conditioner mechanism so you can actually control it. And it's the same in reality, where we have to, on one hand, have that disconnect, that total disconnect between our perception and our reality, but still be in reality and still act in it. And it's so easy for people that live, in a place where there's very low desires and not very corporeal issues of business and honor and knowledge, and to say, oh, I'm all at one, I feel oneness with the universe. That's very nice to say. The question is, can you feel that oneness in the universe while you're tackling with a team at work? And that is what the screen enables you to do both. Not to be disconnected from the world and then say you're connected to nature and disconnected from humans, but actually be extremely connected to humans, but at the same time able to manipulate them and use them to actually get to the goal of increasing your internal power.
Zach, I have a question. Is my connection okay? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe both things are there, or maybe I'm missing a point. But for me, there's two things that happen, and maybe they're both on the screen. That's my question. One thing is for me to be observing this contradiction and to be okay with it, like not be influenced by it, if you will. But then another level I would see is for me to now influence the situation. One thing is, okay, I see these two, I can abide in both. But then another would be how I'm going to actually influence the situation. Can you describe both, or maybe they're both there in the screen?
Yeah, so what you're basically talking about is when we get into 2.1 after the barrier, which is, it's called Katnut Dinukudim, which is the smallness phase. That is when we're able to use our internal power, but basically only to separate ourselves from the situation we're experiencing. And we can't interact with it. We can't use our internal power to actually manipulate the events. And then greatness, which is called Gadlut Dinukudim, that is when we can actually use our internal power to actually affect situations. So on one hand, I've got that disconnection, but on the other hand, I'm actually can use my internal power to actually affect the situation from within. And the screen, of course, enables all that process to happen. Caesar writes, the article says we need a screen because of our spiritual desire. So what differentiates our desire now from the other phase, let's say phase 2? So the idea that all the desires that are below the barrier, which are food, sex, family, money, honor, and knowledge, they never get a screen, ever. Because you could say their egoistic level is just so low, there's no need for a screen to be on there anyway. The screen is on a much higher desire. It's on the desire for controlling your reality. It's on your perception. It's on your internal power. That is where the screen has its play, and not in your corporeal desires. You go to the toilet before and after the barrier exactly the same. You're not flying to the toilet or anything like that. You're eating exactly the same. It's not like before and I'm eating for myself, and now my intention after the barrier is to eat for somebody else. No, you're still eating for yourself before and after the barrier. The idea is that your spiritual desire is just so much stronger and higher than all the other desires. That is what you're dealing with. And then you have these lower desires that you deal with, which are the food, sex, family, knowledge, money, and all that stuff. But your focus, your sense of self, is in that internal power. And that is where the screen gets to play. I think we'll stop here.
Can you speak a little bit about Aviut, how the coarseness of the screen affects the symbiosity of the desire to receive and bestow?
Yes. So in the screen, there's two parts to it. There's the coarseness and there's the hardness. The coarseness is the desire of what you want to receive. And then you've got the hardness is what you're repelling, what you're actually rejecting in the screen. Normally, we just talk about the coarseness of the screen. And because the coarseness is always equal to the hardness. And Baz-Luhrmann gives a great example. He actually uses a corporeal example of how Earth, on one hand, you've got the center of the Earth pulling down everything to the center of the Earth. But on the other hand, you have the crust of the Earth that's actually repelling and not actually allowing you to reach that center. And because they're equal forces, that means you're not. If the pulling force was more than the crust of the Earth, then you would be basically like a magnet. You couldn't move. You'd just be pulled down, and you wouldn't have any ability to move. And if the push force of Earth was stronger than the gravity pull of the Earth, then basically the whole world would be dancing on top of the Earth. So the idea is that because they're equal, that is why we're able to move around. And this is the example he gives in a reflection of part 2 in Talmud Sefirot. So the idea is you've got the coarseness, you've got the hardness, and they're equal. What it means is, if, for example, when you pass the barrier, you first feel that emptiness, and then you get your first screen activated on your first phase of Partzuf, which is called Galgalta. And in that you have two elements. You have the desire, you could say, and what you want. The wanting is called hitlapshut, which is clothing, and you've got the desire itself, the coarseness, which is called aviyut. And the idea is that in the first Partzuf, they're equal. So what you want and what you desire are equal. And it's basically that sort of that chafetz chesed, that feeling of, I feel great. But you don't have any deep discernments. You're just more like floating. It's like floating in space after the barrier when you get that screen. You feel great, you feel awesome, but there's not much discernment. And then afterwards, you've basically constantly got this battle where you want more than you actually desire. And that coarseness goes down and down and down. And then when we finish that, then we start to go into that smallness and greatness of the actual ego itself. Then we have the breaking of the vessels. Then we build Atzilut, which is that protection against that. And then in the end, we raise all our ego into that protection, correct it, and that's end of correction. That's like, the whole method on one bird's eye view. So the idea is that the screen allows us to discern and decide how much the internal power can I use without it corrupting, you could say. Without it, absolute power absolutely corrupts. And the screen is designed to protect you from that.
And the material of the screen, the coarseness, I guess, is made from the quality and quantity of our discernments.
So you've got the coarseness, which is basically that phase 4 desire of the ego. And then you've got the hardness is the screen. But when we talk about the screen, we talk about them as one element. So you basically have an ego without a screen, and you can have an ego with a screen. But you can't have a screen without an ego. And that's written in part 4 in Talmud Sefirot in a reflection.
So you might have said this, I may have missed it, when we talk about Zimzum, Aleph, and Bet, the restriction. Obviously, the screen, it restricts. Are those working? Is that all one? How would you expound on that? Are they the same, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
The first restriction is when you pass the barrier. And the second restriction is when you pass the parsa. The difference is that the first restriction is basically saying, I don't want to fall into my ego, right? I don't want to be able to use internal power without the goal. So no goal, no internal power.
But still,
that's first restriction.
But that's still connected to the process of building a screen. That's the function of a screen, is to restrict, right?
No, so the idea is the restriction is even before the screen. So the restriction is like a law. The law of the first restriction is that if I don't have the goal, no internal power. That's the law of the first restriction. Then you have the screen to enable yourself to receive light without breaking that law of the first restriction. And then you have the second restriction, which is when you pass a parasa, then you're differentiating between the bestowal part of your ego and the reception part of your ego. And that's the second restriction. That sort of makes that separation so that you can live in your sense of self in your bestowal part of your ego while still interacting with your reception part of your ego.
Thank you. I'm feeling really retarded. I need to go back and read this stuff. But that's good.
Zachary, does the Simpson bed disappear after basically end the correction?
Yeah, so the second restriction can come and go depending on your situation, but the first restriction stays forever. If you don't have the goal, you lose your internal power. But depending on the situation at hand, the second restriction can be used or not used accordingly.
When you just said if you use the goal, you mean keeping and harnessing more internal power? Is that how you're defining the goal in this particular statement you just made?
Yes, increasing your inclusive internal power. So if you one of the first signs for someone who, after the variant that they lose their internal power is when they start treating people as actual people and start like complaining about their behavior, and they should be acting differently, and they should have done this and they should have done that, and all that kind of bickering is a first sign that their internal power is turned off, because they're relating to people as phase one would. And the idea is that when you're in internal power, you basically know everyone's a puppet, and that's why you can also manipulate them accordingly, even though you know you're a puppet as well.
Well, is there not a point where you can start demanding from all the other puppets that they get in line with how you see the world?
There's no coercion.
Like you discipline a child. I mean, he's a puppet. He's at a certain stage of development. And if he gets out of line, you got to discipline him back into, you know what I mean? No, understanding it's a child and it's a puppet and you're a puppet, blah, blah, blah.
The difference is that if you're going to manipulate someone, you're going to do it internally. So you're not going to do it externally. So the difference is when we say there's no coercion in spirituality, what that means is we don't use corporeality can't be used to make somebody advance. You can't be like, oh, someone wants to plateau, and then you like make their life as hell. Like that's not going to actually push them forward. What you can do though with internal powers, you can actually push them forward by causing them dissents and frustrations in their perception. So in physicality, nothing actually goes wrong, but in their perception, everything goes wrong. And that's how you can actually, especially when you reach that greatness phase, you can really start to advance yourself and help others advance accordingly. All right, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.